He wasn't asking for money, he wasn't even asking for help. All he did was step forward when no one else would. A billionaire, powerful and desperate, had made a shocking promise, half his fortune to anyone who could heal him. But when this quiet man offered his help, the room went cold. Eyes shifted. Faces tightened, because to them he wasn't a doctor, he was a problem. What happened next didn't just challenge their beliefs, it exposed something far deeper. And by the time they realized the truth, it was already too late. So the question is, who really needed healing that day? Dr. Elias Carter had spent his entire life proving people wrong. Growing up in a neighborhood where dreams rarely made it past the front door, he had chosen a harder path, long nights, endless studying, and a quiet determination that never asked for attention. Now he worked in a small, underfunded clinic on the edge of the city, helping people who were often overlooked, forgotten, or turned away. Most days were simple. Patients came in with pain, and he did everything he could to ease it. No headlines, no recognition, just quiet work that mattered. But even after all his achievements, there were still moments that reminded him of a truth he could never escape. The looks, the hesitation, the unspoken doubt before he even spoke. That morning felt no different until news spread through the city like wildfire. A powerful billionaire had made an unbelievable offer, half his fortune to anyone who could heal his condition. Doctors, specialists, and experts rushed in from everywhere, chasing fame, money, and glory. Elias wasn't interested in any of that, but something about the case didn't sit right with him. And as he stood outside the towering building where it was all happening, he had no idea he wasn't just walking into a medical challenge. He was walking straight into a test he had faced his entire life. The moment Elias stepped inside, he felt it. The room was filled with the best doctors money could buy, tailored suits, confident smiles, voices that carried authority without question. Conversations flowed easily until he walked past them. Then almost instantly the energy shifted. Words softened. Eyes lingered a second too long, not curious, calculating. He kept moving. At the center of it all sat the billionaire. Surrounded by assistants, security, and specialists, his presence controlled the entire room. His condition had already defeated some of the most respected names in medicine. And yet hope still hung in the air because of what he had promised. Half his fortune. Elias didn't step forward right away. He observed, listened. Watched as doctor after doctor presented their theories, each one more complex than the last. Machines were brought in. Charts filled the walls, but nothing worked. One by one, confidence turned into quiet frustration. And still no one noticed him until he spoke. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. Just a calm suggestion grounded in something the others had overlooked, but the reaction came instantly. Heads turned not in interest but in disbelief. A few exchanged glances. Someone let out a quiet, dismissive laugh. Then came the question that changed everything. Not about his idea, about him, where he trained, who he worked for, why he thought he belonged in that room. Elias answered calmly, every word measured, every credential real, but it didn't matter. The doubt had already settled in before he even opened his mouth. To them, his presence didn't match their expectations, and that was enough. Still, something shifted. The billionaire, watching silently until now, gestured for him to continue. For the first time, the room went still. Elias stepped closer, explaining his approach, simple, precise, different. It wasn't built on expensive equipment or complicated procedures. It was built on understanding something everyone else had ignored. And as he spoke, a few expressions began to change. Not acceptance, but hesitation, because what he was saying made sense. Too much sense, but just as the room started to lean in, someone interrupted. A senior specialist, respected and loud enough to command attention. He dismissed the idea outright, called it risky, unproven. His voice carried weight, and just like that, the room tilted back in his favor. Doubt spread again. Not because Elias was wrong, but because of who they trusted more. Security shifted slightly closer, subtle but clear. A silent message that he was out of place, that he had pushed far enough. Elias felt it, the pressure, the eyes, the familiar moment where everything he had worked for could be erased by a single decision made by someone who never believed in him to begin with. The billionaire leaned back, studying him. The room held its breath, because now it wasn't about medicine anymore, it was about belief. And in that moment, one choice would decide everything. Whether Elias would be given a chance or be erased from the room like he was never meant to be there at all. The silence broke with a single word. Enough. The senior specialist stepped forward, his voice sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. He didn't argue anymore, he dismissed. Called it reckless, dangerous. Then, without even looking at Elias, he signaled security. That was the moment everything turned. Two guards moved in, not rushing but certain. Like this had already been decided, like Elias had never truly been part of the room. Conversations resumed in low murmurs as if removing him was just another step in the process. Elias didn't move. For a brief second, something flashed across his face. Not fear, not anger, something heavier. The weight of every moment he had been underestimated, every door quietly closed before he could even knock. Then the billionaire spoke. Wait, the room froze, the guards stopped mid-step. The specialist turned, irritation barely hidden, but the billionaire's eyes weren't on them anymore, they were locked on Elias. Let him try. The words landed hard, protests came instantly. Voices overlapping, urgent, almost desperate now. Reputations were at stake, authority was being challenged, but the billionaire didn't waver. For the first time, control had shifted and everyone felt it. Elias stepped forward. No applause, no support, just tension thick enough to choke on. Every movement he made was watched, judged. Waiting for failure, because to them, failure was expected, but Elias didn't rush, his hands steady, his focus unshaken. Step by step, he followed the method they had dismissed, not complicated. Not flashy, just precise. Seconds stretched, then something changed. A subtle shift, almost invisible but real. The billionaire's expression tightened, not in pain, in surprise. The room leaned in. Elias adjusted once more, calm as ever, and then it happened. A reaction no machine had triggered, no expert had predicted, proof, undeniable, immediate. The same voices that doubted him fell silent. The same eyes that questioned him widened. And just like that, everything they believed cracked. But Elias didn't look at them, he looked at the man in front of him. Because in that moment, it wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about something far deeper. And as the room stood frozen between disbelief and realization, one truth became impossible to ignore. They hadn't just misjudged his skill. They had misjudged his worth. The room didn't erupt. It didn't celebrate, it just went quiet. The kind of silence that only comes when people are forced to confront something they can't explain away. The billionaire slowly moved his leg again, this time without hesitation, without pain. The proof was right there, undeniable, undeniable in a way that no title or reputation could override. Elias stepped back, no victory speech, no demand for recognition, just the same quiet composure he had walked in with, but everything around him had changed. The same people who questioned him now avoided his eyes. The same voices that dismissed him had nothing left to say. The billionaire stood steadier than before, his gaze fixed on Elias, not with doubt but with something closer to respect. But by then, something deeper had already settled in the room. Because this was never just about a leg, it was about how quickly they had judged him, how easily they had tried to erase him. Not because he lacked skill, but because he didn't fit the image they trusted. Elias didn't stay long. He turned and walked out the same way he came in, alone, unnoticed by most. But this time the silence followed him, and outside those doors the world hadn't changed. People would still look, still doubt, still decide who someone is before they ever speak. That's the part no miracle can fix, because stories like this don't just happen in one room. They happen every day in places where talent is ignored, voices are silenced, and worth is measured by something other than truth. So the question isn't what happened in that room. The question is, how many times has this already happened, when no one was there to see it?